This is my new tool rack. It's a 50 position tool rack for my CNC mill that I'm converting right now. I've standardized on the ER20 collet holders. These are just put an ER20 collet up inside there. You know, collets that'll hold anything from pretty much nothing up to a 1/2 inch or 13 millimeter. These are the Chinese version. They're from a company called Yanxing Manufacturing. So that's kind of what you're looking for on eBay. And these are somewhat like a Tormach tooling system. There's a difference. Here's an actual Tormach tooling system. This isn't a collet holder, that's their Superfly cutter. I really like that, but you can see it's got a groove in it. The Chinese version, no groove. That's used for the automatic tool changer. So these aren't really automatic tool changer compatible. In theory, you could put that groove in on a lathe and make your own, or I think someone said they would do them for you. But that's a special order. I think they probably make the collet holders for Tormach, for their Tormach tooling system, so they probably don't want to compete with them and offend them. But I don't really have this populated with many tools right now. I've got 40 ER20 pseudo Tormach tooling system collet holders in there. They just have a 3/4 inch shaft sticks up the top, and that goes into this modified R8 collet. If you're not familiar with how the Tormach tooling system works, they flatten off the bottom here to reduce the clearance, and when the tool, I'll pan on down here, the tool goes up into the R8, it grabs it, pulls it up inside, and then this flat on this side of the collet holder then bottoms out right up on that silver surface that you see, like right there. So you'll get a consistent Z when that bottoms out on there every time. So that's kind of how the Tormach tooling system works. So you get this modified R8 collet from Tormach, and then it'll work with not only their tooling system but these as well. It makes tool changes pretty quick and easy. Particularly with the power drawbar. That's coming up in the future for me. But it's quite a bit easier, I think, even if you don't have a power drawbar. If you're just using a regular drawbar and a wrench to tighten it, it's still quite a bit easier. So maybe we can talk a little bit about the tool rack itself. This is I think 3/4 or 1 inch UHMW. I think it's 3/4 inch UHMW. Just ultra high molecular weight polyethylene. And then the top layer here is something like 1/8 inch, or that's probably 1/16 of an inch acrylic. Acrylic is really pretty good for being scratch resistant. What I did was I reverse engraved it, so the numbers are all reverse engraved on a laser, and then I spray painted it black, and there's a protective paper on there that's removed when you reverse engrave it, but that protective paper makes it so the black only goes into the letters. And then I let that dry and then peel off the protective paper and then spray paint it white, and then adhered it with epoxy to the substrate, the UHMW. And I knew when I did that UHMW is pretty slick and nothing wants to stick to it. And sure enough, it's not a great adhesion. It doesn't have to be in this application. The weight of the collet holders holds it down. But if I had it to do over again, I would probably get something like a PVC sheet, just a solid sheet of 1 inch PVC, or maybe Delrin if I was wanting to spend a little bit more money. It looks even nicer. And I would have just front surface engraved it on a router. So I put the numbers in on the front surface, maybe just spray painted it, masked it, engraved it, spray painted it, peel the tape off. That had gotten a little scuffed up on the front because those are both softer than acrylic, but this is going to get scratched up too. Then you have to fool with all the nastiness of aligning the two. And I did all the routing here on my CNC router, so that's what made these holes. I just put a 3/8 inch bit in there and cut a hole that was 0.78 inches, I think. 7.7 or 7.8, just big enough that these tools just drop in but don't rattle too much. And then it's pretty close to a 45-degree angle. And then I hung it with, in this case, this 1 1/4 inch fiberglass extruded tubing. It's a pretty thick wall. Come down here, maybe you can see how thick the wall is on it. I bought that for my the frame on my laser, but I had a few pieces left over. So using that to do the vertical supports, and then up in the rafter there, there's just 2 screws on each side with little standoffs to miss that wire that's up there. Not much fun working around the duct, but it's fairly sturdy. It has a little bit of wiggle to it, but not nearly as bad as a lot of them I've seen, even commercial ones. I would advise getting the stiffest thing you can find for the vertical supports, maybe black pipe, or steel unistrut, or steel box tubing, something really stiff, and keep the flex to a minimum, and then just get something really sturdy here, and then just, you can drill it on a drill press if you really want to, or do like I did, laser engrave it or cut it on a router. But that's my my tool rack. Linux CNC has a provision for tool racks where I can put all these numbers in there and have all the tools identified, because the Tormach tooling system will keep the Z offsets on all these. It'll know the diameter. It'll even track tool wear, so it can do tool wear compensation. It'll do the end profile, so it'll know, a lot of things about that. But the tool table in Linux CNC, Mach 3 does the same thing. You can just zero the tool out to a standard reference, and then next time you put it in, the program calls for it, you just put it in and it knows the Z offset, so you don't have to go messing around, and makes it a lot more reliable when you start running your programs. You don't have weird offsets that you haven't properly calculated. It makes it a lot easier. So I'll be taking full advantage of the tool table in Linux CNC once I get this populated. Need to talk to my buddy Carl over at Lakeshore Carbide. Shameless plug. Lakeshore Carbide. That's a Band-Aid dispenser. What a great idea. A little magnetically adhered Band-Aid dispenser for your milling machine. One machinist hasn't cut some fingers on some stuff. So I'll talk to Carl and tell him what kind of mill I got and what kind of machining I'm planning on doing, materials and whatnot, and get some recommendations for him. And if anyone else has any recommendations for tools for CNC machining, stick them in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. I've got this big long roughing end mill in there now. I've never used that. I just bought it on Inco when it was on sale on a lark. And I got a couple other things in here I use a bit, but I haven't really populated it yet. This section up in here I've reserved for tapping. So I'll have a 632 tap drill here, 632 tap here, not a hand tap, chip ejecting, good spiral tap for CNC work. And then I'll have the 632 tight fit clearance drill here. And then I'll do 832, 1032, quarter 20. Might even do 3/8/16. I don't do a lot of stuff that size, but it doesn't cost much. I got plenty of room on the tool rack for it, so I might do that. And I'll have a selection of good end mills down here. I probably will buy another Superfly from Tormach. I really like this. This one has an insert in there that's for steel right now. I do mostly aluminum and some plastic, so I have the inserts for aluminum, but it's not much difficulty to swap one out, but for the price of it, it's probably better not to even have to do that. Just keep one set up for steel, one set up for aluminum. I actually like it that much. Quick discussion about strategy when you got a milling machine with limited Z travel, and I certainly do, because this has a round column on it, and I only have 5 inches of quill travel. So if I want to use more than 5 inches of quill travel, then I'll have to take the big handle here and loosen a couple of big bolts and jack it up, and then it requires me to reset not only the Z but the X and Y because it's rotated around the column. It's a big pain, so you really don't want to have to do that. You want to keep all your machining down to within that 5-inch Z travel limit if you can. So one strategy that helps with that is to keep all your tool lengths the same. That big roughing end mill, that titanium nitride coated end mill there, that's about as long as you want to go, maybe a bit too long. It'd be nice if they all stayed, you know, a couple of inches of stick out on them. That way you have, they're all about the same length. You can jack it up and then have about the same travel. The exception here is this Superfly. It's a lot shorter, but when you think about it, you're machining the top surface only with that. So the top surface of this lines up just a little short of where the bottom of the tool would be. So you have the rest of this for drilling or whatever you're going to do with these tools. Side milling, whatever. So it's okay for that Tormach tooling system, Superfly, to be shorter. But the rest of them you want to be kind of the same length. So to that extent, I use a lot of these little, typically called stub length drills. The proper name, I guess, is machine screw length, or screw length machine drills. Anyway, they're a lot shorter than your average jobber. That's a number 7. That's what you'd use for tapping for a 1/4 20. And then compare that with a similar jobber length, and you can see there's a lot more stick out there. And it does several bad things for you. All that stick out, it's going to make the drill wander when it's drilling. Shorter one for a given diameter is going to be stiffer. I like these. These are cobalt drills. They're a little tougher steel. I can still resharpen them, but they tend to last longer. They're not carbide, but they're cobalt high-speed steel. So I get stub length, screw machine length, cobalt high-speed steel. Put those in, and those will be about the same height as the taps that go in. That's kind of nice. I'll select end mills that are all about the same. What I really don't want to do is use something like this bad boy here. It's just a drill chuck on the ER20. Well, in this case it's not an ER20, but it fits with the same Tormach tooling system stuff. By the time you put this much stick out on there and then put something like a jobber length drill in there, you would definitely be exceeding that 5 inches. So that's why this one's way up in the top corner. I never really use it. It's just there for the weird, rare thing where I'd want to, jack the head of the milling machine way up, drill some holes for something, but not really for machining. But anyway, I got a whole lot more area to fill out in here, get some good ideas on some tools, and organize my tool rack. If you do decide that you want to do the Tormach tooling system with a power drawbar, you'll notice that there's a taper on the top of this and it's fairly solid. The length of this is about the same as the Chinese ones, but you notice there's really no taper there, and there's not a whole lot of meat to this. There's pretty thin wall there, so if you did want to taper so it would self-center when you're over top of it, if you had a little compliance before it goes up into that R8, modified R8 collet, you'd probably want to taper on that, but there's nothing to taper because it's really thin, so I'll probably end up machining some aluminum or even a hard plastic dowel that'll epoxy into there, and then I can put a taper onto that, machine it down, and make a guide for going up into the modified R8 collet on a Tormach tooling system. But anyway, that's my tool rack, kind of a sidestep in the CNC conversion of my turd polishing project here on my little Grizzly 1006 mill drill. A little bit of a teaser for what's coming. But 3 timing belts. What else here? Some timing pulleys. I got 6 timing pulleys. Starting to look like motor mounts, maybe. I've got 2-foot piece of 4-inch by 3-inch aluminum box tubing. So that's going to be motor mounts. One of them, the Y one, will go right in here. There's the stepper motor that'll mount to it. The X one, a little shorter, is about 9 inches, will go back in this direction. And then the motor will stick out to the left side there. So that's the X and the Y. And then for the Z, I've got this nasty piece of hot rolled steel. But that's going to mount right up in here. So I'll clean that up and paint it. So things are coming right along. The electrical panel's still not wired, but getting there. Probably work on that tomorrow. I keep saying that every day, but I think tomorrow I might actually do that. And then get these motors mounted, and I'll be turning some lead screws and moving my milling machine around real soon. So maybe later this week you'll be seeing this thing move. As always, any questions or comments, drop them below, and I'll try and be good about answering them. And I hope you're following along and enjoying this. And I'll catch you on the next one. Motor mounts, probably.